What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm breaking down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to break down some very important news involving the Fed, what the news is saying right now about the markets, and with some very important levels you have to watch for on SPY, Nvda, Tesla, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. But before I break anything down, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon in just 7 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at the market right now, right? We're looking at SPY. This thing just gapped and just continued to pump since, and it's currently pumping right now. But the question is, how are we going to respond to this 460 resistance? We're getting very, very close to it. And also above 460, we have like 462, which is going to be the next very important level. We're going to be watching these levels very carefully as the market's getting closer to all-time highs. But why is the market pumping this way and what's going on with the news? Let's talk about that first. Jerome Powell basically came out yesterday and he said that the Fed staff is not necessarily forecasting a recession. That was very, very bullish news, but you also have to remember that he said other things that were very hawkish and bearish at the same time about how the Fed is not going to be lenient, how they're going to continue to remain restrictive, and how there's still a lot of work to be done to fight inflation. So there was very, very mixed things that he said. I called this out yesterday, and I told you whichever one makes the headlines will determine what ends up happening. The media could have talked about the hawkish things Powell said, and the market could have dropped off that, or the media could have talked about the really bullish things he said, such as this right here, which could have pumped the markets. And they chose to primarily focus on the more bullish thing, the fact that the Fed is not forecasting a recession, and that was super, super huge news. The market is loving it, and the market's continuing to pump as a result of it. Now, to add on to this, I just wanted to mention that for Thursday, we had Royal Caribbean. We actually have them coming out, McDonald's, and just a couple of others. I'm actually recording this video kind of early, so we're still waiting for those. But after the market closes, we have Ford, Intel, and Roku. These ones right here before the market opens are just not that significant. They're not going to affect the whole market that much. What's going to be more impactful is going to be like Ford, Intel, and Roku after the market closes. Now, as far as data goes, initial jobless claims came out lower than expected, showing some strength in the labor market, which shows right now we're not really seeing a big softening. We're not seeing the labor market contract the way a lot of people are thinking. Right now, there's still relatively low unemployment, and the market is still holding up. And on top of this, the GDP numbers came out, and they were actually better than expected on most of these sectors. If you look at GDP sales quarter over quarter, this is above the forecast, but a little bit lower than what the previous number was. Same thing with the growth quarter over quarter, once again beating expectations. So this data suggests that the economy right now, are we in the best of economies? Not necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily say that because there is still going to be contraction to come, but the GDP numbers are still positive and they're still actually above some of these forecasts. So there still is strength in the economy according to this data. And that suggests that, once again, the Fed is using this as an excuse to make the claims that they basically claimed before. And now they're calling off the recession, saying that they're not really expecting it. So that's really, really significant. And this is having a big effect on the markets. Now, moving forward, after we got this rate hike, they did say some things that inflation is still too hot, but that's not really making the headlines. The bigger thing is now the fact that they're calling off the recession and they're saying that it's very unlikely. And you can see this right over here. The GDP grew 2.4% pace in the second quarter, topping expectations despite the recession calls. So now this is fueling the media and their claims that, hey, there might not be this recession. We're in a much better place. The soft landing is possible, and this and that. So it's really fueling what the market's trying to do. If you just continue to look at this, the Dow is on this crazy, crazy streak. It's been up 13 positive days in a row. That is longer than any time since 1987. McDonald's had a win right over here with pretty good earnings. You can see right over here, there was a lot of talk about Grimace. They did relatively well, so that's some interesting stuff. And it's currently up about 10.3% in sales. Meta did well for earnings. They're gapping up and going to go. Shell had profit that slowed down, though, so a little bit weak from them. Besides that, the majority of these things have been quite good. Even Comcast got a higher boost. And then that's basically it for the news. Now let's talk about the market. How on earth are we doing? So we're getting very close to this 460 resistance on SPY. This is going to be very important. If we pump, we're going to be watching, could we break 460? 460 is going to be the next level. If we break it, 462 is possible. Okay? Mark my words, 462 is possible if we break 460. But if we reject off 460, we could come all the way back down to this imbalance around this 458.6 level. And then below that, we have about 457.75. Right. And if we do break below that, then we're going to be watching the EMAs as our supports. But for now, I'm not too worried about that as the market's holding up very nicely and we're quite a distance away. All right, so watch your EMAs as support. Watch these other critical levels as our supports in case we do break down. We have this like 457.8 area. We also have this 457 flat, 456 flat, then 455.3. I don't really think the market's going to tank that hard. I don't really see how it would. And I just want to note to everyone that right now, looking at the charts, we're going to be watching this 460 area. That's going to be our next resistance. And then after that, we have 462 flat. Because I'm calling this out because historically, the market has gotten rejected off 462. So we're going to be watching these zones very, very carefully. But for now, the market's gapping up. It's looking quite strong. I'm going to break that down a little bit later about other tickers. When it comes to Tesla, we're going to be watching its support. If Tesla fails to hold its EMAs and it breaks below 268, you're going to be watching 265 as its support. And if 265, that's where this gap is down here. If it breaks below this, once again, the support right over here, this low we had from 267.5, it's going to come down to fill the gap at 265. And if that fails us, then we have 262. But the resistance right now is about 270. That's what Tesla's been testing. Break 270, this thing's going to go flying up for about 272, then potentially 275 after that. And we need Tesla to get above 274 specifically for us to turn bullish. If it breaks 274, we could see Tesla go for that gap. There's an unfilled gap on the daily, all the way up in the 290s, I believe. We could go all the way up there, all the way back to 291 if we get some very, very positive news and Tesla manages to break and hold above 275 at the very least. If it fails to do so, then it could get a rejection. So just be very careful on this chart and watch that as a very critical level. So watch the levels I just mentioned on Tesla. And to add on to that, so we're going to be looking at Aapl. This thing is up pretty big, currently at about approaching $100 and $196, excuse me, $196. We're getting very close to it. Looking at the chart, it got a nice gap up and now it's just trading sideways, very, very flat. If Aapl breaks below 196 or around 195.75, around this area, this low right over here from this session in the pre-market, it's going to come all the way down to fill the gap around 195, which is not even that big of a drop. It still is pretty close to us. And if it breaks above 196, we could be watching for this thing to pump all the way up. If it holds 196 and breaks above 196.5, 198 is a possibility for Aapl if it continues to break out. It's looking relatively strong so far, so watch these levels very carefully and just be very careful as well. Looking at the QQQ, this thing is actually above 383. If it continues to break out, 385 is going to be the next level to watch for on the triple Q. If excuse me, if it manages to hold above 383. If it ends up breaking down and it gets below 381, this thing is going to come all the way down to fill the gap around 378 if it does fail to break or hold around this like 381 to 380 zone. But for now, it's trying to hold up. So we're going to be watching this test of 383. Breaking, I'm going to be watching 385 on the triple Q, which is very possible. Nvda is up quite nicely. And like I said before, I'm very bullish on it looking at the setup. If you look at the 4-hour time frame on Nvda, this thing is once again gapping up, holding up very nicely. And we have a target of about 480 from a technical standpoint. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders that has held. I'm going to be watching for 480 on Nvda. There's a good chance it's going to get a nice pump very, very soon. And finally, for Meta, this thing is up 10% right now. This thing is up like crazy at 330 a share. We're going to be watching and try to break 330. If it manages to do so, there's 335 and 340 is going to be a critical zone. If it gets above 340, I called out the level 353, which was the resistance from yesterday. The critical resistance that I called out from yesterday, that was basically a historical resistance for Meta. So if it manages to get above this 340 level, that's going to be a possibility. But for now, we're going to be watching 330 as our resistance. It is up pretty big in the pre-market. It may cool off just a bit and then try to continue going. So watch these levels carefully. We have some strong guidance on Meta, and we're going to be watching these charts carefully. All right, so for SPY, we're still holding up nicely. We're heading towards 460. The question is, could we break it or not, since that is going to be some critical resistance? So make sure you watch support and resistance and you're very, very careful in this market. And don't forget, things are looking very good. And last but not least, I forgot to mention NIO. NIO is on fire. It's on fire. I was calling out NEO since this thing was at $7 to $8. It is still pumping and approaching its deliveries. Things are looking very, very promising. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely spectacular day. Watch your levels very carefully and do what you have to do. The market's looking very, very strong. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you. Peace out.